October 1347. 12 Genoese galleys drift silently into the harbor of Messina, Sicily. The sailors are either dead or dying, their bodies covered in blackened, oozing sores. As the survivors stagger onto the docks, they carry an invisible passenger. Within days, the air in the city thickens with the smell of decay and the sound of frantic prayers. This was not just a disease, it was an apocalypse in slow motion. In just a few years, nearly half of Europe's population would be erased from existence. You've likely heard that the Black Death was simply a tragedy of fleas and rats. But the reality is far more complex and far more transformative. Today, we dive into the dark heart of the 14th century to see how this biological horror shattered the feudal system and paved the way for the modern world. To understand the plague, we must first look at the world of 1300. Europe was a rigid hierarchy of lords and peasants, bound by the strict laws of feudalism. However, this stability was a facade. Europe was already struggling with the Great Famine, a decade of crop failures that left the population malnourished and vulnerable. Meanwhile, the Mongol Empire had forged the Pax Mongolica, creating a massive trade network known as the Silk Road. This connected the East and West like never before. But this connectivity was a double-edged sword. Along with luxury goods and new ideas, the trade routes became superhighways for a deadly pathogen from Central Asia. By the time the plague reached the Crimean Peninsula and the city of Kaffa, it had evolved into a biological weapon, launched via catapults over city walls. As the plague tore through the heart of Europe, the social fabric began to fray. Fear replaced law, and the basic bonds of humanity dissolved as parents abandoned children and priests refused the last rites to the dying. Desperate for answers, the people turned to the only authority they knew, the church. But when prayer failed to stop the mounting corpses, a dangerous crisis of faith ignited across the continent. In their madness, some believed the plague was a divine punishment for sin. This led to the rise of the flagellants, bands of extremists who wandered from town to town, whipping themselves in a gruesome attempt to appease an angry God. But the search for a scapegoat took a darker, more violent turn. False accusations erupted, leading to horrific pogroms against Jewish communities, who were baselessly accused of poisoning the wells to spread the disease. While the streets ran red with blood and sickness, the medical world was utterly powerless. Doctors attempted bloodletting or stuffing pouches of aromatic herbs into their masks, unaware that the real killer was riding on the backs of fleas. The scale of death became unimaginable. In cities like Florence and London, the traditional graveyards overflowed, forcing the survivors to dig massive plague pits to bury thousands in nameless, communal heaps. But as the plague finally began to recede, it left behind a world that was fundamentally broken and yet, strangely liberated. The massive loss of life created a sudden, drastic shortage of labor that flipped the entire economic scale. For the first time in history, the peasant held the power. With so few workers left to till the land, survivors demanded higher wages and better conditions, effectively breaking the chains of the rigid feudal system. This shift birthed a new middle class. Serfs who once belonged to the land now traveled to cities, seeking wealth and opportunity, sparking an unprecedented wave of social mobility and innovation. The psychological trauma also triggered a cultural revolution. The obsession with death, known as memento mori, drove artists and thinkers to question the old ways, paving the long road toward the Renaissance. The plague didn't just take lives, it shattered the very foundation of the feudal system. With millions dead, the remaining peasants realized their labor was now a precious commodity, sparking a sudden, violent shift in power from the lords to the workers. This economic upheaval paved the way for the Renaissance. As wealth redistributed and the grip of the church loosened, humanity began to shift its gaze from the afterlife toward the beauty, science, and potential of the physical world. We see the echoes of the Black Death in our modern world, from the birth of public health quarantines to the evolution of labor laws. The trauma of the 14th century forced a primitive medical revolution that eventually led us to the germ theory we rely on today. The Black Death serves as a grim reminder of human fragility, but also of our incredible resilience. Out of the deepest darkness, Europe emerged not just recovered, but fundamentally transformed, stepping out of the Middle Ages and into the dawn of modernity. History is written in blood, but it is read in the lessons we leave behind. If you want to see how other ancient catastrophes changed the map of the world, click here to explore the fall of the Roman Empire.